Secretary of Veterans Affairs Eric Shinseki says he's mad as hell about allegations of deadly delays and cover-ups at the VA, but that he has no plans to resign. He told a Senate Veterans Committee yesterday it is too soon to cast blame, but that wasn't good enough for outraged lawmakers.
Isn't there evidence here of criminal wrongdoing? That is, falsifying records, false statements to the federal government? That's a crime.
And that is Connecticut Democrat Richard Blumenthal yesterday as CNN was covering those hearings. Joining us now, Georgia Republican Senator Johnny Isakson, the member of the Veterans Committee or the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. Johnny, we really appreciate your time today on America's Forum.
Great to be with you, JD.
Bottom line, Johnny Isakson, should Eric Shinseki resign?
Well, I think you're right to run Blumenthal's comments yesterday. You know, well, we've got to get to the bottom of this, and there's one thing to fire somebody, it's another thing to hold somebody accountable for a violation of the law. I'm not accusing Eric Shinseki of doing that, but I'm saying until the investigation is complete, we need to keep our powder dry. I don't want to feel good by firing somebody and leave the people who are really the culprits not there to hang for the blame that they deserve. So let's get to the bottom of this thing. We began doing that yesterday. We've uncovered a April 26, 2010 memo that demonstrates that if the VA knew or should have known the practice of gaming was going on, that's 4 years ago, and obviously nothing's been done about it. It's time to hold them accountable.
Well, Senator John Bachman here now, and we had Dennis McDonough yesterday on CNN kind of defending what was going on, defending Shinseki as we've seen from the White House right now. Let's play that clip real quick, and I want to get your reaction to that.
Nobody's more mad than the president, and I have the scars to show it.
So, you know, we've seen the White House come out defend General Shinseki, Secretary Shinseki. Have the calls for his resignation maybe come a little bit too quickly here?
Well, what hasn't come quickly enough is for the administration to have a more independent handling of this than they are. I know they've appointed one of their top deputies to oversee an investigation of what's going on at the VA, but I really think this thing rises to the point of an independent investigation so that the White House and the Congress can both be assured that there are fair eyes looking at this situation. Anytime you have potential criminal activity or a criminal act, I think you need an independent prosecutor or an independent investigator to make that determination.
Senator Isakson, you were there at the hearing yesterday, and we've gotten all these public pronouncements about anger. The secretary saying he's mad as hell, Dennis McDonough saying no one is more angry than the president. When does the anger translate into action?
Well, it's got to translate into action now, and I've told Secretary Shinseki, and this is on your tape from yesterday, I think he is being ill-served by the senior management of the VA. The accountability that exists in the military, where when you give orders, you follow the orders, is not taking place in the VA. It's very obvious that they have ignored admonishments from the top to stop the gaming of the situation. And worst of all, it's obvious to me that employees at the Veterans Administration are putting their own compensation and their own service ahead of the health and safety of Americans veterans by gaming that system. And that is just dead wrong, potentially criminally wrong, and we've got to deal with it.
John, there in committee, obviously there is a national responsibility that all of you who serve on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee have to the nation at large, but also in terms of constituent services, because just about every state has veterans health services. What have you heard about your home state of Georgia? Have you heard any talk about anything going on in the VA medical centers there that offers cause for concern?
Well, JD, I'm glad you asked the question, because in a way we were the beginning of what's led to this investigation now, because last August I held a 2.5-hour field hearing, which was televised live on Fox, by the way, because we had 3 deaths that were attributed directly or indirectly to poor follow-up in terms of the mental health department at the Atlanta VA. Ultimately, the director was fired at the Atlanta VA. We have a new director in. I meet with her about every 6 weeks to go through what's happening there. We have accountability measures in place, and we've had no more instance of a lost life because of poor service or poor appointments or the manipulation of appointments, and hopefully that's what's going to take place throughout the Veterans Administration.
Well, Johnny, it sounds as if you've put together really the primer, if you will, for Secretary Shinseki. I know you'd never claimed that, but here's what's very troubling, Johnny. We hear about General Shinseki's valor on the battlefield, his ability while in uniform, and I guess many of us are scratching our heads. How could someone so effective as a commanding general, have such difficulties battling with federal bureaucrats?
Well, I think it's because his company commanders and his battalion chiefs and all of those under him are not carrying out the orders that he's giving, and he's not following up to make sure the orders are given. That's a failure of the chain of command from the top to the bottom.
Well, and mindful of that now, Johnny, if that is a failure of command on this program within the last week, your predecessor in the U.S. House, former Speaker Newt Gingrich, was saying, despite his valor on the battlefield, despite his excellence as a commanding general, that it was time for Secretary Shinseki to step down. But you're saying, well, let's wait a little bit. I want to drill down more on your reasoning right now, Johnny.
My reasoning is simply this, and I go back to Senator Blumenthal's comments, and by the way, he's a prosecutor, a district attorney from the state of Connecticut, who pointed out, rightfully so, that to falsify or otherwise lie to the federal government is a felony. We obviously have situations here where it appears that agencies of the federal government have been lied to and where there have been people that have been not telling the truth. If that's the case, the last thing you want to do is get somebody fired and get them out of the picture and not held accountable. You want the chain of command intact so that you can go up and down the chain of command, root out where the corruption is, root out where the crime has taken place, root out where the problems have been, and then have the self-satisfaction not of firing somebody, but of having held the agency accountable and fixing the problem.
Well, Senator, are you disappointed that Eric Holder seems unwilling to step up in this case and kind of hold someone's feet to the fire?
Well, you know, when you talk about, I've called on Eric Holder to resign 2 years ago. I was the first senator to do that, and I don't feel like he has served the public well in the selective enforcement of federal law. And I think if I were the president, and I'm not, and I respect the president's job, but if I were the president, I would tell the Justice Department to get involved in the investigation of the VA now, because I think Senator Blumenthal was right. There's potential criminal activity there.
Well, you take a look at this situation, and Johnny, there's been so much criticism of a failure to find some bipartisan consensus. It certainly appeared from what I saw of that hearing yesterday, there's bipartisan consensus that this problem needs to be solved. What accounts for the White House delay here and the inaction of the Justice Department, or the reticence of the Attorney General to say he would even take a look at criminal negligence in this regard?
Well, it's kind of a bunker mentality right now. You go from Benghazi to the IRS to the VA. Every time the president turns around, he's defending himself, or he's having his lieutenants defend himself. And every time we turn around, there's some misdirection from the White House. I think the president needs to realize that he's being ill-served by the misdirection, that it's time to bring some independence to the accountability mechanism, and he ought to have an independent investigator of the Veterans Administration, and he ought to call in his Justice Department to do what the Attorney General of the United States is supposed to do, and that's enforce the federal law.
Well, Senator, we won't hold our breath on that right now, but I do want to ask you one more question, just a little bit more than a minute to go here on this issue involving the federal judge nomination from President Obama, a guy who you also support from Georgia, has a conservative record, but Harry Reid, because of that, has been kind of dragging his feet on this. But you tell us there's been an advancement on this now.
Well, it's my understanding, I talked to Senator Chambliss last night, and Senator Reid, as I understand it, told Senator Chambliss that he would not vote for the nominee. This particular nominee is Mr. Boggs, but that he would see to it that he got a vote. And that's all we've asked for in the beginning, is to make sure that every one of the nominees from Georgia gets a vote up or down. We're a little bit like Arizona, J.D. Arizona's got 6 judges up for confirmation right now. We have 7, and we're working hard to see to it that all of them get confirmed.
And another reminder, the constitutional duties of those who serve in the United States Senate and the custom of working with the administration to fill those judgeships, subject, of course, to Senate confirmation. And John, I know also the fact that Harry Reid really controls the voting schedule has you working very hard to have a whole lot more Republican colleagues come join you after the midterms, so you'll enjoy majority status in the Senate once again.
I've enjoyed the minority about as long as I want to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to majority status, and I hope it starts January 1st of next year.
Johnny Isakson, Georgia's Republican Senator, we thank you very much for your time and your insights on the VA, on Secretary Shinseki, and on the inner workings of the United States Senate. Thank you very much, sir.
Always great to be with you, J.D. All the best.
So we hear that from our friend Johnny Isakson. Now, Just one thing we didn't quite get to, John, and
Yeah.
that's the upcoming Senate primary in Georgia.
Well, we've been talking to Senator Isakson about this. You know, he's not going to pick a favorite most likely before we actually get through the primary, which is next week. But it's one of the most fascinating races in the country and something we'll follow in great detail coming up next week. It's next Tuesday.
And I think about it, right now, both of Georgia's senators served with me in the House. 3 members of the House running on the Republican side for the Senate, but it appears someone else might win that primary. We'll keep an eye on that coming up next week.
That's someone else being David Perdue.
That's right. Still to come, more on this VA crisis. We will hear from the national commander of the American Legion. He says it's time for Shinseki to go. We're going to go away, but we'll come right back on America's Forum.